Hello, everyone. It's a real honor to be speaking here this evening. The theme for tonight is really beautiful, and some of the other speakers, well, all of the other speakers, have really important messages to share. So, yeah, it's a real honor to be up here. So I'm going to talk this evening about sexuality in the lost youth. So it's kind of a quick exploration of the climate that we're living in at the moment and how that's influencing and affecting young people's abilities to connect with themselves and connect with other people. It seems that when we look at the world that we're living in at the moment, we're facing a bit of a connection crisis. We don't really know how to connect with each other. We don't live in communities anymore, as Andrew was saying. And we're struggling. What does it mean? What is love? What's intimacy? You know, what's sex? Is it all the same thing? And when I am talking about sexuality in this talk, I'm not talking about orientation. I'm talking about sexuality as a broader concept that kind of includes all of the ways that we relate to ourselves intimately and romantically. So this is my lovely logo. Last year I started a project called the Lahlita Project, and it's basically a space for people to just come and ask some questions about who they are. You know, how do I relate to my sexuality? What are my likes? What are my dislikes? What makes me feel safe? What makes me feel loved? What do I hate? You know, these questions that might seem quite simple, but are quite profound in their simplicity because we're not asking ourselves these questions. We don't have a space to ask ourselves these questions. So we do workshops on things like expectations in relationships, intimacy in friendships, rejection, building self-confidence, and things like that. So yeah, it's kind of quite a broad project, but the response has been so beautiful. I think people are just dying to talk about these things. And another reason I wanted to start the project was because I was having really beautiful conversations with my friends about sex, sexuality, and relationships, and I noticed how healing they were, how much I got from it as a speaker and a listener. It made me feel like I wasn't alone. Made me feel like I was having the same problems or similar problems that everybody else was having. And it just gave me a feeling of groundedness, like I'm actually okay and I have all the answers I need. I just need to slow down and listen. And that made me think, like, if I get to have these beautiful conversations, where are other people in society going for these conversations? Where can they go? And I started to look around. I was thinking, okay, I'm an ordinary young woman in society. Where can I go for information on sexuality? And I thought, okay, I could go to the doctors, but that's medical. It's not emotional. You know, I'm not getting any emotional support. I could go to a sex therapist, but that feels too serious. It's too expensive. And I could go to a tantra space, but sometimes that feels exclusive and it's also expensive. And it's my soundtrack, guys, don't worry. It's all planned. And also, Tantra's filtered through spirituality a lot of the time, and that can feel quite inaccessible to a lot of people. So that made me think, okay, I feel like sexuality is something that we all share and we all experience. So why is it that there isn't a space where everybody can go? Or, you know, there isn't a space to open a dialogue up, but just have a conversation about these experiences that we are having all the time. You know, our sexuality is always influencing us. We're human beings. We need love and connection to survive. And it just feels like it's not being prioritized. I mean, I'm doing another raise your hand, so audience participation is up to the max. So just raise your hand if you wish you had better information on sexuality when you were younger. Yeah. I mean, imagine if someone had sat down and said to you when you were younger, you deserve love just the way you are. Or you don't have to be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't respect you. Or you've got all the answers you need, you just have to listen to yourself. You know, imagine the world that we'd be living in now if that was the standard education for young people. Next. So I think the project and spaces like this are more important than ever now, because when we look around at the world that we're living in, this, connection crisis that we're facing, technology is playing such a huge part in the way that we're interacting with each other. It's shaping so many of our intimate and personal relationships. I'd say maybe over half of our interactions happen via a screen. Maybe. If you think about it day to day, probably. And it's like, maybe as an adult that's less scary, but if you're a young person and that is your whole existence, how is that affecting your ability to actually relate to a person in real life? So we know that education in schools is shocking where sex and sexuality is concerned. We know that it's the smallest fragment of what sex and sexuality can be that our children are learning about. So if our school systems aren't teaching the young people, what or who is teaching them how to connect? This thing that's so integral to who we are. Who's teaching the young people about these things? It seems like we all just wander around aimlessly trying, it's like trial and error, isn't it? Like we just keep going until we figure it out. And it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be this way. So when we look at the things that are influencing and educating young people, two things crop up. So we have Tinder and we have porn. These are the main things that our children, and I don't have any children, that young people are being influenced by. So when we look at Tinder and what Tinder is, it's this kind of consumerist style, very quick. I don't know, I'm sure you all know, but you get a picture of somebody and you swipe right for yes and left for no, and that's it. And then you can talk to them. And it's so based on aesthetics. You don't get to see the person in real life, how they move, how they smell, how their voice sounds, how the person in them sings through their body. You don't get to see that. And I'm going to have a drink of water. Am I going too fast, or is it? So another problem with Tinder is that through a mobile phone or a computer, you can create a whole persona. You can be anyone you want to be. You can be outgoing, you can be interesting, you can have all these cool hobbies, and anything you want, you can be it. But this creates huge anxiety with, am I good enough? Am I good enough compared to the person that I present myself to be? Is this person going to be disappointed when they meet me in real life? Which creates, huge anxiety about our surrounding relationships. And, children as young as 14 and 15 using Tinder because they think that is the only way you can meet somebody. They don't know that there's any other way. Like, you're going to meet someone, you're going to do it on Tinder. It's madness. It's just so sad. So quickly, the other thing that is, really influencing young people is the porn industry. And I don't have time to go into all the reasons why the porn industry is so damaging to young people. It could be a whole event in and of itself. But the porn industry creates huge confusion. What is it that people want? Am I supposed to be acting a certain way? Porn is so based on fantasy and so far removed from what reality is. I mean, you don't see them getting a kebab after they've just finished sleeping together or, having a nice cuddle. It's not real. And just but it's true, like, where's the reality, And it just creates this level of confusion that when young people think that is the only thing, that's the only thing that they're seeing as what sex looks like. And one of my friends came up to me the other day, just as an example. She's an incredible woman. She's very strong. She's very powerful, inspirational. She's 22 years old. She came up to me the other day and she looked me in the eye and said, "Ria, I only go for guys who objectify me because I've been watching porn from such a young age that I only know that a woman should be objectified to receive love and attention. And I just think that's so sad. Like, why is it that something as beautiful and raw and important as human connection is being filtered through this falsehood and, you know, is conditioning the minds of so many young people? And it's not just young people, it's, you know, you carry this with you into the rest of your life, and some people never break free from it. So yeah, it really breaks my heart. And I think that it's time to open up spaces where we can talk about these things, because porn is out there, Tinder is out there, there's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do is provide a space where people can say, this is confusing me, like, what's real? What do I think? Thanks. I'm not done, so just hold your claps. I'm on a timer here. So basically what I would now like to do is just zoom out a little bit more. So when we look at this connection crisis that we're facing, and we place it in a wider context, and we look at the biggest thing that we're facing, the biggest issue that we're facing at the moment in society, which is the environmental crisis. And when we think about the environment, sometimes it can be quite hard to connect with that because we live in a city, maybe it feels quite abstract. It's also the biggest thing in our existence. It's the biggest thing that we know. So it's no surprise that young people and a lot of people in society have a real struggle with connecting with the environment. And when we just take this back a step, we've got our connection to the environment, and then we've got our connection to our society, our connection to other people. And then we've got our connection with ourselves, and when we look at this, this is the root of this problem. The crisis of connection to ourselves is what is rippling out and causing this massive connection crisis to our planet. And what we need in an environmental crisis is empathy, understanding, compassion. And where do we learn these things? In our relationships. So if there's anything at all you can take from this talk, it's just to be a bit more curious about who you are. Get to know yourself, and that effect will ripple out into the world. Thank you.